to episode 0 of Retro Game Club with Hugh and Rob. This is, like I said, episode 0, which is mostly an introductory episode, and we should be doing new episodes about every 2-ish weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you might remember me from the Retro League podcast. I hosted it for about 9 years, and now I don't. This is not going to be a clone of that show. It's there are going to be some similarities, but this is how do I put it? Like we're focusing a little bit more on like homebrew projects and development and projects that you can do on your own.
And we definitely don't stray from emulation. Certain kinds of emulations may be kind of central to the show. And yeah, I was a fan of Hugh's old podcast, and I actually wrote in quite a bit as Rob from Detroit. And as it turns out, I'm not some crazy stalker. So that is probably good for both of us.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't totally ruled that out yet. But
True. Yeah, that is absolutely a fact.
I
so
haven't come home to find like one of my pets spoiled or anything.
No, not yet.
Yeah, not yet.
But yes, so moving on from that, I think this will be an ever-evolving show, but every week we'll have some news, and from that news, or just something that me and Hugh had been talking about that week, would be kind of a topic of the week. Maybe it's a project, maybe it's just a game, maybe it's something new that came out. For the most part, it won't be over anyone's head, though.
Yeah. I generally, first of all, I'm not an expert on anything. That helps a lot in terms of not doing things that get over people's heads. But we're trying not to do something that's like too niche or too, like you have to have a PhD in computer science to understand. Most of the projects that we're going to focus on are topics. Again, things that should be pretty accessible. Again, they're all things like I think I could do for the most part. Now, sometimes it'll be like, hey, let's talk about Masters of Doom and how Doom was developed. Clearly, I could not develop Doom, but you can go buy the book and follow along if that interests you. I don't know if we're doing Masters of Doom as a topic. I'm just throwing it out there as the kind of thing.
But we might get into the weeds a little bit on some of these topics, simply because my idea for the show came from Hugh on his previous podcast talking about programming for Genesis, and I'm a developer, and I do a lot with MAME and a lot with arcade cabinets, and so we might get a bit techie.
Yeah, I'll try to not make it too hardcore in that department, though.
And then
we'll see, because again, I don't want to like turn people off. I don't want people to be like, oh, I have to know assembly language.
Yeah. No, that's not part of it. And then after our topic of the week, we will have a game club each week. So every week or episode, however you want to look at it, we will each pick a game, so 2 games, and we'll play both those games. And then in the next episode, we'll talk about them, and we hope that we get a lot of good listener feedback from you guys playing the games during that time frame with us. Or if you listen to an episode that's pretty old, you can still email us and tell us what you think.
Yeah, and generally, I'm going to, despite my reputation for people who listen to my old show, I'm not going to be like, hey, everybody, you should go play Hyper Catalog 3 on the PC Engine, right? Like, it's not going to be some bizarro thing like that. I have sort of a list penciled in already, and it's all games that are pretty accessible. And at least for me, Rob, I don't know about you, but I'm generally picking things that are available on multiple platforms so that people can go and try games on different platforms. I know for me, like, the idea of there's something really cool about multi-platform gaming to me. Like, I always have enjoyed playing games on different systems and just comparing the differences between them. I did a little article. Yeah. So I did a little article a little while ago, like comparing games that were on both the Atari 7800 and the NES, for example. And it's amazing to me, like, for the most part, the NES versions are better, but a lot of like old arcade games play a lot better on the 7800 than the NES. So a big part of this is going to be me kind of going back and trying some games on different systems and just seeing how they, how they are. So it won't be like game of the episode is Lords of Thunder for PC Engine. It'll be Lords of Thunder for whatever system you have it on. I guess that's a bad example because it's only on 2 systems.
But still, a lot of the games I'll pick out will be accessible on, at the very least, archive.org. I'm keeping the games pretty simple at first, but then I'm going to dive into some DOS and Apple II stuff. A lot of those Sierra games you could get in packages from Steam and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, and the Sierra games are kind of a cool one because, some of them have like Apple and Commodore 64 and then DOS versions, and then, like you mentioned, they're re-released in packages, and there's fan remakes and there's fan upgrades. So part of it is kind of getting into, some of the ancillary projects around some of these games. I suspect we'll get into a bit too.
Yeah, like for example, would be how someone updated X-Wing and I think TIE Fighter to have all new assets, which would be very cool to check out.
Yeah, X-Wing and TIE Fighter, good series, good game.
Didn't age that great, but now it has new graphics.
Yeah, that's the thing. A lot of DOS games, games from, I don't know what the right era, what to call it, like sort of the pre-Windows 95. I guess it was even a Windows 95 game, wasn't it? Like a lot of those, they don't look great today, but they've gotten some fan service. I was thinking about it when I was playing some Star Wars games. I was playing the Rebel Assault games on PlayStation recently. And it's like, these are really fun, but they don't look as good as Star Wars Arcade today.
Yeah. I definitely agree.
Yeah. Ooh, Star Wars Arcade. I gotta write that one down. That is a great pick.
I actually have that arcade cabinet.
Yeah. The sit-down or the stand-up?
The stand-up. The sit-down is as big as one of my closets, so there's no way I could even do one of those.
Yeah. Yeah, you're talking actual, not that Star Wars trilogy thing, but the real one.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. So should we move on to some news?
Yeah.
All right. The first one was mine. It was a new release of RetroArch 1.7.6. And the big deal about this one is they have added PlayStation 2 compatibility. So you can play NES and Sega systems on PlayStation 2. There's a lot of quality of life upgrades. But yeah, that seemed like the big one. I see tvOS for Apple TV. It supports OpenGL right now. But yeah, it's a big upgrade. I've downloaded it not to PlayStation 2, but just my x86 desktop.
So how exactly this is when I saw this originally, I thought they were adding PlayStation 2. So like I misread the article the first time, and I'm like, oh geez, I don't know if I really want to try a PlayStation 2 emulator. That can't be very good. But it runs on the PlayStation 2, so you can run
exactly.
Yeah. So what?
So you could emulate before on PlayStation 2. It's just now Libretto, which is the back end of RetroArch, works on PlayStation 2.
And what's the mod like for that? I mean, if I have a spare PlayStation 2, or I find one for a nickel at a yard sale this year.
That sounds like a topic of the week.
Because I actually don't know how to do that. Like Dreamcast is pretty easy. If you have like the right Dreamcast model, you just throw a bird disc in there.
Yeah. And actually, it works great.
Yeah.
But that's still not. I don't know if RetroArch. That was just like QuickNES or something that worked on it, right? It wasn't actually RetroArch on.
Yeah, it was
Dreamcast.
QuickNES, and then there was a Super Nintendo one that wasn't great. I think it was called like DreamSNES. That would be. Or if I was going to make a Super Nintendo Dreamcast emulator, I would call it DreamSNES. But I think that was the name of it as well. And that was kind of cool. Yeah, I used to have one of those. Don't tell me, I had one of those at my desk at work many years ago at a different company. Not where I'm at now. But I had it for like deployment nights, like if we all had to work late. And, there's this sort of. Sorry to get off topic. I get off topic quite a bit. But like if you work in IT, there's a lot of nights where it's like, hey, we have to deploy some code at 10 o'clock tonight. And it's like, well, yeah, but I don't really want to work all the way through till 10 o'clock. So there'll be a lot of nights where it's like, well, we'll stop working at 5, and then we'll play some NES games on a projector, and then we'll do the deployment. And that's where the Dreamcast was great. All right. So new version of RetroArch. Yeah, this is pretty nice looking.
Yeah, it's been working good for me. The next article is from you, I think.
Maybe. Yeah, new version of Hatari. So if I actually have not used this emulator. It just showed up on my newsfeed, but this is an emulator for like the Atari computer family. So the reason I don't use this because I didn't grow up with. We're gonna talk about nostalgia stuff a little bit later, but for me, like I didn't really grow up with Atari computers, so I've never really been big on going back and trying them out.
Yeah, the only time I ran into a computer, I was actually setting up studios in the 90s, music studios from the back of a guitar store. I'm sure I'll go into work. I worked there for a long time, and this one guy had an Atari Falcon, and I'd never heard of it before that. This was probably in 1996, and I was fascinated by it. But other than that, yeah, it used the GEM GUI, well, like a lot of Atari STs did, and I think this Atari supports that, or it looks like it.
It does, yeah.
But yeah, that's really Atari ST to me seems more like of a European thing.
Yeah, I definitely think it was bigger in Europe than in the U.S. U.S. at this time period, we were pretty dominated by Apple, and I mean, ultimately DOS took over the entire world. But the Atari stuff, I don't know the exact reason why Atari was. I think Atari's name was maybe a little bit, had been diminished a bit in the U.S.
We were a bit jaded.
Time. Yeah,
still.
Yeah, I think so. I think there was some of that. I see these things at Midwest Gaming Classic. They have Atari's various Atari computers set up there all the time. I'll plug Midwest Gaming Classic every chance I get. So if you get sick of me hearing me talk about Midwest Gaming Classic, I'm sorry, but it's gonna happen.
And we'll both be there this year, by the way.
Yeah. If everything had happened like 6 months earlier, we could talk about doing like a live show there. But
there's no way.
No way. Also, off topic again. Like I've thought about that, and it's like, no, I'd rather just go around and do stuff at the show. I don't really want any pressure of having to do like I don't like having to like deliver stuff if I don't have to. So
yeah, I'm with you on that.
But yeah, Midwest Gaming Classic is like it's mid-April. So if you haven't ever heard of it before somehow, maybe because you don't live in the Midwest, you should definitely go to MidwestGamingClassic.com, and then you can try some of these like computers and stuff that we're going to talk about.
And you could find great prices. Ernie Hudson from Ghostbusters will be there. But more importantly, we'll be there.
Yes. And people who you meet like actual like developers of games. So many arcade games were developed in Chicago. And a lot of those developers show up, either do panels, or sometimes they're just walking around. They're just like regular attendees. So that's all cool.
Yeah.
Speaking of programming, another cool news item is there is a new Humble book bundle called Break into the Game Industry. So this is a collection. These Humble bundles are always great. I must have 300 of these books sitting on my Kindle, including like audiobooks.
Yeah, I always think like, oh yeah, I'm going to teach myself and become a master of Blender. that it never happens.
Yeah. Now this one though, this bundle has a really good assortment of books. So it's not just like 3D game programming. Because I wouldn't have bought that. I'm not really interested in ever doing 3D game programming. But it's got some books just sort of about video game history, some stuff about classic game consoles. Of course, it has how to do 3D rendering and all that stuff. Then it has just a book about like how to become an indie game developer. Because there's probably more to consider than just writing.
Yeah, there's a business side of it.
Yeah, there's books about marketing, games about. There's one I'll probably read first called Game Design Theory. Sounds very academic, so that's kind of interesting to me.
Yeah, I think I have that one somewhere. But yeah, this starts at $1 and you get 4 books, and $8 you get double that, or over double that. 15 you get a lot of books. So good deal. As of today, there's over 7 days left, so we'll see how fast I edit this show together.
Yeah. Now, my only word of warning here is I bought this and it does not have Mobi versions of the books. So that's the default format on Kindle. It has PDF and EPUB versions of all the books. So I know with like Calibre, you can convert EPUB to Mobi, I believe. So you
and
might
then
have to
send
do
that to your Kindle.
Yeah, then send it to the Kindle. Or I mean, you can do PDFs on the Kindle, but if you're like me, I use like the old man font, which you can't do on a PDF. Like just zoom in to where there's like
Yeah.
one letter per page is about how much my Kindle zoomed in. It's just because I don't like wearing glasses, and I'm too terrified to get laser surgery. So instead, I just use large font on the Kindle.
Next one, new retro style game out, NecroSphere. I can't tell if this was just released or the deluxe version was just released, but it's on Steam. Again, it's called NecroSphere. It looks pretty fun. They keep boasting that it's only using 2 buttons. It looks like it has great gameplay. I definitely plan on checking this out. This show will definitely focus on actual retro games, but I wanted to give this one a shout out. It looked like they put a lot of passion into this game.
Yeah. As you can tell, like we're still sort of working out what is and is not in scope for the show. It'll definitely change over time. I have a feeling we'll include a lot of like indie kind of neo-retro games because I find them interesting. I know you find them interesting, and I also just sort of generally like supporting those projects and giving them a little more attention.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, not much more to say on this one other than it looks fun. Check out in our show notes. We'll have a link to it and a link to all the news. And yeah, there's a great video. Decide if it's a game for you.
See, then we got an article called PC Speaker 211, which is about the joys of PC speaker music.
Now, if there's any one of our news items that's kind of into the weeds in terms of being over your head, this would be it.
Yeah, this is over my head. So I don't have good memories of PC speaker music. I remember playing like the original East game. I'm a huge fan of the East series, and playing the DOS version of that and feeling like I wanted to have my ears removed from playing it. And that's a game with incredible music. So, but this talks about a lot about the internals, and then talks about an album made using PC speakers that apparently sounds good.
Yeah, I only listened to a few seconds of that.
Yeah, so
but I mean,
before this is like days before Sound Blaster.
Oh yeah, and I mean, this talks about how they did it the first time, meaning the first generation of PC speaker games. And then Monophonics came into it. LucasArts really upped their game, apparently.
Disney at some point released their own sound hardware. I don't know if you ever owned that.
Yes. I did not own it, but I remember not selecting it in games I would install on my
right.
DOS 622 machine.
Yeah. It was, I guess, a not surprising move by Disney. Because they were, I mean, even back then, like they weren't the bit media company they are today, but they were still big enough where I think they thought they could maybe set the standard for computer audio, and then everybody would have to use their standard, like Sony does now with disc formats and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, a really interesting article. Definitely, I would only check this one out if you're really nostalgic for those old sounds, or if you were a programmer. I remember when I was first teaching myself QBasic, because of that, what was it, bananas.bass or something?
Yeah, gorilla.bass, yeah.
Gorillas, yeah. And I got to the sound part of teaching myself, and at the same time, I just learned how to play the Who's Bob O'Reilly on guitar. So I just put those notes in, thinking like, oh, this will sound exactly like it. And no, it just sounded like beeping, blaring at certain tones at you.
Yeah.
No, nothing like it.
Sticking with PC gaming, Baldur's Gate and Neverwinter Nights are going to be making their console debuts this year, which kind of surprised me because I knew there were games called Baldur's Gate on consoles, but I keep forgetting those are more like dungeon crawlers. They aren't like real Baldur's Gate, I guess.
I've actually never played a Baldur's Gate game.
Oh, really? Did you play the Gold Box D&D games?
No,
Okay.
no.
Oh, wait.
The only D&D games I played were the Capcom ones.
Okay. Yeah, which are action, games more than anything else. So, yeah, I mean, if you liked the Gold Box D&D games, Baldur's Gate is like the natural transition. It's such a huge upgrade over the Gold Box games, though. And if you like, I guess I'll call it Western-style RPGs, where you kind of build your own character, and it's semi-open world. I mean, there's like a story you're supposed to follow, but it's a little bit like Ultima in that if you just want to go into a town and just set the town on fire, you can do that.
That's hilarious.
And if you set too many towns on fire, then like these guards, this like holy order starts coming after you because you're evil and they're going to hunt you down. And then if you pay the church a lot of money, they stop coming after you. So like if every time you burn a town to the ground, you then go give a bunch of gold to the church, they leave you alone.
So Neverwinter Nights, never played that either. Does that have anything to do with Baldur's Gate, or is it just...
Just same game engine.
Oh, okay, okay.
Exact same game engine. Some upgrades. But anyhow, these are... it's a good series. I don't know... It did not give... Yeah, so they don't have details on the launch dates or anything yet. It would be cool if you could buy like a bundle with all these, although you would never have time to play them all.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's just a cool
But someday there will be. It'll be in a humble bundle someday.
Yeah, there'll be some way to get them all at once. I thought you were talking about having enough time to play them all. I don't know when that'll be.
Oh, no. Not till I'm living like in a retirement home or something.
Yeah, with retirement home with good Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Another kind of techie article here is from a blog I'm a fan of called nerdlypleasures.blogspot.com. And he does a write-up called Proper Analog Retro Video Capture with the Datapath E1/E1S. So this is like, this is also kind of over my head because I'm not a big video capture expert or even a small one. But it's about a device you use to capture analog gameplay. And he's showing examples from like many, many different systems on here. A lot of computer stuff, a lot of PC stuff, some consoles. I mean, these images look amazing.
Yeah,
they really do.
yeah.
And if, for some reason you want to do, I don't know, like if you're doing a YouTube channel about, hey, I'm going to play through Super Mario Brothers. Please don't do that YouTube channel, by the way. Like, if you insist on doing a new YouTube channel where you're playing video games, let's try and get a new spin on things.
But also, yeah, if you're going to do that, you'd probably just use MAME or whatever. Because you just record directly from there.
Yeah, now it could be, like, I would be prone to say, like, if you were doing reviews of original hardware or controllers, or just sort of like the challenge of capturing the original systems. The other part is, like, maybe you want to do Saturn games, and there are not a lot of really awesome quality Saturn emulators out there. There are some that are reasonably good, have 80% compatibility. But that's what I think would be the kind of sweet spot. Or games on original DOS hardware. I mean, some of the stuff he talks about on here, most of these are things you can emulate, of course. But
I mean, I see him using Game Boy Advance here. How do you even come out of a Game Boy Advance? Is there a... do you have to mod it in some way?
No, I'm assuming that... This is the problem. I don't read stuff very thoroughly. I have very low reading. I have very bad reading comprehension. Yeah, so he says right here, that's what I thought. Game Boy Player. The Game Boy Player for the GameCube.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
I was going to guess that, and luckily he confirms that in the article. Yeah. That Game Boy Player is a really awesome piece of hardware, too.
Yep. But yeah, that's a really interesting one. And then, what did we have next? So yeah, the last one was from me. This was here, let me go to it. Let me open it up. It was from Kotaku. Why nostalgia for video games is uniquely powerful. And it just really talks about how it's a really long article actually, but
Hmm.
it talks about how you get a sense of going home when you play old video games or listen to old albums you
Hmm.
love. And the part that really got me about this is they really get into Miyamoto's
Hmm.
childhood and how when he was biking around his old town and through bamboo forests and finding these little caves, a lot of that got into Super Mario Brothers,
Hmm.
and that just fascinated me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd read something else about how Legend of Zelda was basically his childhood, but I guess with the sword. Like
Huh.
he would kind of explore around, he'd find a cave, and then he's like, "Well, I can't go in that cave unless I get a lantern." So then he would go home and get a lantern, and then he could go look around the cave, and that's like, all right, well, that's Legend of Zelda right there. And yeah, I understand because like old video games do, of course, remind you of a time when you had fewer problems, or maybe you had the same number of problems, you just weren't aware of them, or something, or they didn't seem as bad. Um,
Yeah, and you could spend, I mean, I just remember somehow I would have a lot more focus on, maybe it's because I didn't, now you have every video game,
mhm.
because of emulation and stuff like that. But back then, you would only have a few games because they cost, 40 to 60 bucks, and you didn't have much money, so you really had to
Mhm.
get, your money's worth out of it.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, it was a big deal. Yeah, I mean, I remember once I had Metroid, like I didn't have any other new games for a while, so I did everything you could possibly do in Metroid.
And you had a great time doing it.
Yeah, yeah. Now, if I sat down and said, "All right, I'm going to try and get all 255 missiles in Metroid," um, boy, that would really feel like a chore now. I have played, like, I have the NES Classic, and I have done a Metroid playthrough on there, but I didn't come anywhere near 100% playthrough. It was more like, how quickly can I get through Metroid? Kind of
But in
playthrough.
playing it, it kind of brought you back to the first time you played it.
Yeah, yeah, it was definitely a good game. Still, I mean, there's nothing wrong with replaying Metroid, and it's kind of weird because like maybe not everybody had like the best growing up experience, and yet you can still appreciate old games for the time. It's kind of weird how that works.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I thought it was weird that this article came out 2 days before we are going to record
Mhm.
episode 0 of this podcast, and it kind of seemed like serendipity to me since this is literally the Retro Game Club.
Yes, yes,
And we're here for this exact reason. Or probably.
probably something along those lines. Yes. You want to talk about the project of the current time period?
Sure, yes.
So each week we're going to kind of do a spotlight on a project or topic of some sort. I'm going to keep calling it project, even though that's not officially the name. But that's just the way I think of it.
Yeah,
So
we'll get there.
yeah. So this week, or whatever period of time it is, we're going to talk about BleemSync. And the reason this came to mind, for me at least, is shortly after Christmas, there were a lot of articles about how the PlayStation Classic is completely tanking and they're now half price everywhere. So I said, well, half price PlayStation Classic sounds like a pretty good deal. There's a
Hmm.
couple games on it I actually don't own. Like the NES Classic, I had something like 28 out of 30 games on it. I bought the thing anyways. Super Nintendo Classic, I did not have the same number of games. Like I don't own Secret of Mana, for example. I don't have a physical copy of Earthbound, stuff like that. So it seemed like a little better
Yeah.
deal. Even though if I can't imagine ever wanting to play Earthbound again. No, no offense. I feel like one day I'm gonna get a mob of Earthbound fans with pitchforks outside my door.
At waiting for you at Midwest Gaming
Yeah,
Classic.
maybe because I keep talking about how overrated that game is. Oh, like I don't know if I would put it's definitely if I was to rank RPGs on the Super Nintendo, it wouldn't break the top 5. And that's
Yeah, I think I'm with you there.
yeah, I mean I would definitely it's not ahead of Final Fantasy 6/3. It's not ahead of Mario RPG. It's not ahead of Shadowrun. Um, not ahead of Final Fantasy 2/4, I don't think. And if you want to count Final Fantasy 5, right, that's you're already well into 5.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyhow, BleemSync. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna buy one of these things because I've heard it's a like no skill required mod project. that you can just get a USB card, install BleemSync on it. Now, one of the keys here, what I learned is it has to be a low power USB drive. So if you have like a USB drive that has a bunch of LED lights that blink and all that junk, don't use that USB drive. You need a USB drive that has very, very low power demands. And then it really is just a matter of getting the BleemSync software onto the card, onto the USB card, and then copying your games on. So just to give a little bit overview, BleemSync is an open source project. We'll have a link out to the GitHub project. That's where you get all the builds. You can build it from source, I guess, if you felt like it, but they have pre-made builds for various operating systems. It's a .NET project, which is kind of interesting. So you can run it on Linux because of Mono. It always seems weird that you would write I guess it's not that weird. I don't see a lot of open source projects that are .NET just because, Microsoft, it's like a closed environment. It's a vended product, right? So I think a lot of people...
now that there's like Visual Studio Code, and all that
Now, mind you, I have at least 2 open source .NET projects on GitHub. It was mostly around me wanting to expand my experience with .NET, and they all run in Mono, so there are open versions of it. So anyhow, it's a project. The way it basically works is you get a USB drive and you copy the BleemSync software onto it, and then you rip your PlayStation games. It's very particular about the format of the games, so you have to make sure they're ripped correctly, and then in the folder structure it expects, and there's like a metadata file that has to be filled out the right way and all that stuff. And if you have a multi-disc game, there's some extra steps there. It's not very difficult, though. I mean, I would rank this, if there was like a 10-point difficulty scale, this is at best a 2 in terms of difficulty. So,
yeah, and I like that, usually when you get this stuff, it has to be formatted to the exact, like it can't be exFAT, it has to be FAT32, which is a nuisance to do now in Windows 10, or, it's actually easier in Windows or in Linux. But, this supports ext4, exFAT, NTFS, and FAT32, which it's kind of quality of life stuff that makes this easy.
Yeah, well, right. It's a lot easier to work with. I want to say I did it because I formatted the drive in Linux, so I did it extFAT. Not that it matters. It could have been FAT32.
exFAT. exFAT.
Yeah, right. There's no T in there.
So how's the user interface?
It's pretty great. So it uses the same interface that's on the PlayStation Classic already, which is an interface that looks like a PlayStation sampler disc. So you have to give it like a screenshot, like a thumbnail shot for the game, and then it browses through. Now, the PlayStation Classic has like 20 games built in. I was afraid if I put more than 20, what happens to this UI? Well, it works. It's just the thumbnails get smaller and smaller. So like I put 30 games on the drive, and so far I can still navigate through them pretty well. I think if you put 100 games on, that's the thing, a 32 gig drive. So I went out to Amazon and I bought some low profile, what brand are those? The SanDisk, the little tiny ones that just barely stick out of the USB slot at all. I also use them on like all my Raspberry Pi projects because they don't take up any space at all. And I got a 32 gig one of those. Also, this was like a after Christmas deal. They were, I don't know, you could buy 100 of them for $1 or something insane. That's not actually the deal, but it was some absurd deal like that. And then formatted, the only downside to these little SanDisk drives is they are extremely slow to write to. So copying 10 gig or whatever I put of PlayStation games onto it took a very long time. It took longer to copy it to that drive than to rip them from the original CDs.
So what ISO formats does this support? I'm trying to find that right now.
So that's a great question. I probably should, let me open up the script I used to rip the games. These are things I should have memorized or written down, but
Episode 0.
Yeah, well, I don't really believe in preparing for anything. So what works?
I don't see it anywhere.
Yeah, I want to say, well, hold on one second. This is such a stupid question. I can just literally look at my hard drive where I have these, because I saved them to my hard drive first. And go ahead and edit this as much as you want.
I know it uses BinQ. I see that.
Yeah. So it's all BinQ format. And the exact thing, and then I don't know if it helps, I just basically run I use CDR-DAO on Linux to rip it, and that's all. It's just a straight BinQ rip. So there's no, there was nothing special about it, I don't think. I think you have to make sure it's mode 2/2352. I don't know what mode 2/2352 means. Just if you don't do that, it doesn't boot.
Huh. Yeah, I don't know either.
Now, that might be like a default. I noticed, like, when I was looking a little bit of how-to on this, it seems like Windows users never seem to run into some of these weird things Linux users do.
It's different OS, different problems.
Yeah. Yeah. So there was a little bit of work on that on my part, but I ripped, like I said, about 30 games and also sampler discs. I ripped a bunch of PlayStation Magazine discs. Just
that's funny.
Just for fun. Yeah, why not? You know, there's a lot of PlayStation games that I like for exactly one level. So Tony Hawk Pro Skater is always the example I use for this. I like the first level of Tony Hawk Pro Skater. I can't imagine ever playing an entire playthrough of Tony Hawk Pro Skater.
Yeah, I agree simply because I was never good at it. I do see it supports PBP format. I think that's a compressed PlayStation ISO format.
Yeah,
Feel free to email us if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I haven't tried that yet. Everything that I ripped worked except for Sim Theme Park wouldn't boot. And I'm not, again, the disc, it could be a damaged disc. I don't know. I haven't checked the compatibility chart yet. That's the only thing that didn't work for me. What's cool about it is like games that don't work. So the PlayStation 2 has like almost full backwards compatibility with the PlayStation 1. And games that don't work on the PlayStation 2 do work on BleemSync, because I tried one. That was like literally the first thing I tried was, here's a game that does not work on PlayStation 2. Can BleemSync figure out how to play it? And it does.
Yeah.
So there's a couple interesting things. So the .NET version that they bundle is 64-bit. So that's important because once you copy all the games to the USB drive, you actually have to run an executable on the USB drive that then reads the drive and creates the BleemSync database. And I first tried that from a Windows 7 virtual machine I had that happened to be 32-bit. And it just wouldn't run.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh, right, that's right. I, for some reason, have a 32-bit Windows 7 virtual machine. I literally only use it for iTunes. I have,
I'm sorry, this uses and this is a question, this uses the PlayStation Classics emulation, right? It's not, BleemSync is a different emulator. It's just a way of getting the games to...
It's a way of getting games onto the system, yeah.
Interesting.
But everything plays pretty well. I mean, I tried stuff that I thought maybe would give it a hard time. So I mentioned like Star Wars Rebel Assault, or Rebel Assault 2, whatever the one is on, that's Rebel Assault on PlayStation. And like Final Fantasy 8, Chrono Cross. Not that those are particularly technically advanced games, but they're newer games. Of course, the downside is the controller. It only comes with the regular D controller. So that will limit what games you install. So I haven't tried a game that requires the analog controller yet.
Oh, yeah.
The terrible pro wrestling games all run on there. I played some WWF SmackDown on it. So that actually plays great. Videos, everything. Like, I thought it was really good. I didn't think, I know some people have complained about maybe the system being laggy or frames per second, but honestly, if that thing is running at like 58 frames per second instead of 60 frames per second, I am not ever going to notice the difference.
Yeah.
Right. If I was doing like a tear down, obviously you would. So in the past, I've tried PlayStation emulators on Android devices, again with games that I ripped, and I found those to not be as good as this little PlayStation Classic. They've talked about at some point, there's been some recent news that they might be able to do like Super Nintendo emulators on the system soon, which would be kind of fun.
Well, I was just going to bring that up. So, a lot of people were making fun of the PlayStation Classic because the Super Nintendo Classic, when modded only to get the PlayStation ISOs on there, actually plays the same games PlayStation Classic comes with better than the PlayStation Classic. But so it's funny that then you'll go back and then put Super Nintendos on the PlayStation Classic. It'll be interesting to see how it plays those.
Yeah, no, I went this route strictly out of convenience.
And it's like, you could get a PlayStation Classic for like $7 now.
Right, right. I went to Target the other day, and they still have Target is still selling them for like $99. So that could be why. So they must have had 100 of them still. Amazon had them down to like 50-ish, which is when I bought it. Just figuring, again, just doing it for this one project. And the system is so small that, like, next time I have to travel for business, if, you know, I don't want to go out with coworkers, which I usually don't, I can throw this thing in my suitcase and hook it up to the TV in the hotel room and have
Exactly. Yep.
have more than 30 PlayStation games because of all the samplers that I loaded on there. Lots of crazy PlayStation Magazine samplers are on there.
Yeah, I mean, you could get them for you're right, $50 now on really every single site.
Yeah, and I suspect they'll still go even cheaper. I probably could have waited out till they were at Dollar General or something. I just didn't feel like, you know what, it's winter. A part of it for me is like, it's winter in Chicago. And if you can't tell, I'm from Chicago area, if you can't tell from my horrible accent. So what else you can do in Chicago in the middle of January? I mean, it was literally like negative 45 degrees here the other week. So
yeah.
That's a great time to just sit down and rip a 20 or 30 PlayStation CDs, load them onto a USB drive. I did most of that while watching the Awesome Games Done Quick marathon, really. I had that going on the screen and was just ripping PlayStation games one Saturday. Great day.
You know, it's a cool looking device. You know, the controllers feel good. You know, I really have nothing against the PlayStation Classic. It was just, I don't think it sold well because it was a strange time for gaming.
Yeah, it's a strange time, and I think the game selection hurt it. I really do.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot on there that I was really like, woohoo, want to play this. I have been playing Battle Arena to Shinden with my youngest kid on it a lot because she thinks that game is hilarious. And it kind of is a hilarious game, and it is sort of a button. Like, I don't think there's a lot of skill involved in that game, playing through it again. I'm sure there are tournament players who are fuming at this, or former tournament players. But I found that you don't particularly have to be great at the game. Like, it's kind of a button masher in some ways. So that was fun. And then the other game that it came with we got into was the Cool Borders game. So
that's a fun game.
Yeah. And I never owned that, so that was kind of cool to try for the first time. That was maybe my favorite new-to-me game on that collection.
Rayman's a fun game. Tekken 3 is a great port of that. Grand Theft Auto, I mean,
yeah,
it didn't age well. Abe's Odyssey is in my opinion, one of the most frustrating games ever created.
I've heard a lot of people say that game is really great, so I'm going to reserve judgment until I try that one. That's still on the, like, I haven't played it yet list.
You know, I screwed up, and I over last summer I was doing a playthrough of it, and I was stuck at one level, so I'm like, I'm just gonna open up YouTube, just see how to get past this one little part. I accidentally clicked and saw the ending of the game, and I was like, well, I literally have no reason to play this anymore.
Yeah. Now, I knew the entire story of Final Fantasy VII before I played it. I still played through it and liked it enough to play all the way through the game.
Now, what games did you put on BleemSync?
Oh, you just got to ask me this after I close the... All right, so they're alphabetical. I'm going to read you these alphabetically, all right? Atari Anniversary Collection, Chrono Cross, Descent, which I still find nauseating.
Yes.
Doom, the PlayStation port of Doom is great. I know it's not like a perfect PC port, but it's a really good port. Eternal Eyes, Final Doom, also a good port. Final Fantasy 5, 6, and 8. So 5 and 6 are, I bought those from the Square store for like $5. Interactive Sampler Volume 10. Interactive Sampler Volume 5. Lilo and Stitch. Don't ask why I put that game on there.
I don't even know. I didn't even know they had a game for that.
They do. It's terrible. Then all the Midway Arcade Greatest Hits collections. One of those is the one I mentioned that does not play on on PlayStation 2, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Namco Museum 3, NBA in the Zone, Need for Speed, about a few issues of PlayStation Magazine, Quake 2. Oh, yeah, that's a really good port too. If we ever do Quake, Quake 2 on PlayStation, I'll put Quake 2 on my list of future games of the designated time period.
Absolutely, yes.
So that was really good. That was I've had the Quake 2 CD for PlayStation sitting here forever. Haven't really played it, and fired it up and thought, wow, this is like better than the Nintendo 64 version.
Oh, we have to do that game soon because I have great stories from Quake 2.
All right, we'll put Quake 2 down then. Let's see, Sim Theme Park, Skydiving Extreme, which is just a Dance Dance Revolution game, but with skydiving.
And never heard of it.
Yeah, it's some game I got at a yard sale for $1. You know, Star Wars Rebel Assault 2, Tiger Woods Golf, some jam packs, WrestleMania Arcade, WWF SmackDown, and really the whole reason I did this project, which comes in last alphabetically, luckily, X-Files. So
I never played the X-Files game.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge X-Files fan.
Yeah, same here. And I haven't played the game just because the load times are just painful, right? I mean, this is from the time period where it's a lot of, there's full motion video clips. Yeah, there's a lot of waiting. And guess what? There is no waiting on this thing. That thing booted up. I started the game off just to see if it would run. I'm like, oh man, I hope a game with this much FMV runs. It runs perfectly. Oh, I mean, maybe it's 59.9 frames per second, but other than that, it seems just about perfect.
We'll have to add that to one of our Gameclub games also because
that's on PlayStation and it's also on PC.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
And it's a kind of like point and click adventure game, sort of like there's video scenes and then you're in a room and you have like a little icon, like a Seventh Guest style, you know, click around and find stuff. So I just wanted to make sure it worked, and then I gotta find a time to just sit down and play through that. That's kind of like I'm going on a business trip and have to spend a few nights somewhere game, I think.
Yeah. Well, cool. Any final thoughts on BleemSync? I did not partake in this project.
Yeah, but someday when you see the PlayStation Classic in the dumpster behind Target, you right, you grab one of them and then you try this. Yeah, I think the thing for me is like it was a low skill project. You don't have to solder anything. You don't have to build from source. It's like, to me, exactly how these kind of this to me is like the role model of great projects. Like, you just install it, it runs, everything works really well. It's just a great thing. And again, like maybe the PlayStation Classic isn't the best hardware, and maybe on the newest Raspberry Pi that's coming out, PlayStation runs better, and PlayStation runs better on Super Nintendo. Like I get all these arguments. I hear all of them.
But it took you minutes to get it up and going.
Oh yeah,
on a cool looking console.
Yeah, it took no time at all to get running.
Well, cool. Yeah, I'm sure we're going to have topics of the show. We still got to come up with good names for these segments. Topic of the show, topic of the week, whatever, that
featured
will be really quick because we'll say, hey, this thing didn't work for me.
Yeah.
I can't talk about it.
Yeah, there might be some of those. And I think, for some of these projects, it would be nice to get the authors or community members on. For some of them, I think that would be kind of fun. And I keep wanting to call it Thing of the Week, but I don't know if that's a good title.
I like it. I just pictured Kurt Russell in his big The Thing hat.
Yeah. Or just feature topic of the week, or Fortnite or whatever. I don't know how long a fortnight is.
That's 2 weeks.
Okay. I don't want to use that because Fortnite has other meanings in gaming now.
Yeah.
I hear that's a really popular game.
I watched a video of it once and said, no, thank you.
Yeah, I thought my first impression was this game sort of looks like Chex Quest. Like sort of the graph, like the art, like the color scheme. And I've seen people play it, and it's just not for me. I understand why it's huge. I completely 100% understand the appeal of the game.
I just have a stack of games that I have to play, so I can't dedicate to something where that's the only game you play, know?
Yeah, for me, it's just kind of not the style, like not the thing I want to do. You know what I mean? Like, I get why it's fun, but not for me.
Yeah. Well, Speaking of games, yeah, so our Game Club games for the next episode, my pick was Golden Axe. Eventually I'll start, give us, a few more listeners and a few more episodes in, I'll start picking some more unique games. But yeah, I'm going to start with Golden Axe on many, many systems.
Yes, I think I will play the PC Engine version just to punish myself for bad things I've done during the week. My pick is going to be Tetris. I'm going to start simple. And this is actually a game I've been playing a lot recently, too.
Again, because winter in Chicago.
It's winter in Chicago, because that, and I was watching some Tetris championship or speedrun videos, and it got me thinking about, if I follow what some of these good Tetris players do, like I kind of look at their style and see, their strategy, like I actually sort of picked out like, oh, I see where they're putting blocks in certain types of situations. And I thought, oh, okay, so like Tetris, there's obviously a skill angle to it, and there's also a strategy angle, right? So either one of those will get you so far in the game. And I've always been sort of stuck around 200,000 or so in my high score on Tetris. This is the NES version. Scoring may vary on other systems. And yeah, that's why Tetris came up for me, and we'll talk about it a little bit more next week. I don't think we have to talk a lot about how Tetris works. I think everybody gets that.
Yeah.
But I encourage anyone who's listening to go fire up your favorite or least favorite or medium favorite version of these two games.
And if you don't have them, there are many versions on archive.org. So you just go there, you search for it, and it plays right in your browser. You could even get your joysticks working or just play with your keyboard. But yeah, so easy, probably legal way to play these games if you don't own them yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the arcade versions of both of these. It's always weird to me that Tetris has an arcade version. I've seen it in person, but it always just struck me as odd that Tetris was an arcade game at one point.
Yeah, and we'll definitely get into that in the next show. So if you play these games, if you have any ideas for this show, please email us, email@retrogameclub.net. That's email@retrogameclub.net.
Yes.
You could also see our website, retrogameclub.net. There isn't anything there yet.
Yeah.
Because this is episode 0 and we're still stumbling through this.
Yeah, I mean, if this works, I mean, it'll be a few episodes before we kind of figure out, what the right flow is and what the right topics are. And, for early listeners, thank you for putting up with that.
Yes. Feedback is appreciated.
I don't know about you, but I like sometimes checking out new podcasts from the beginning and hearing how they evolve.
Yeah, I was never able to do that with your old podcast. I came in about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So you guys already had it down.
Yeah, well, there's a whole long story behind that part. It's mostly that we had to change web hosts. That's the short version. And then bandwidth. Where you have if I had a nickel for every time someone sent me an email like, hey, I use Bluehost and they have totally unlimited bandwidth hosting. I'm like, yes, they say that until you put up 500 episodes of a podcast and people try to download all of them. And then you get a warning saying you've exceeded your bandwidth limit.
Yeah, and we've already charged your credit card.
Right. So please don't ever send me one of those emails because they're always hilarious. But that was the basic problem. That even if your show isn't extremely popular, if 100 people try and download every episode of something that's literally 30 gigs, right? That's how big the archive is. 30 gigs, you're gone. Your host is just going to shut you down.
Yeah. They'll think it's a DDoS attack or something.
Yeah, they're going to say, oh, you're on this $5 shared hosting plan, and yeah, it's unlimited bandwidth as long as you aren't using it. It's all just been through that a lot. So,
well, cool, everyone. Thank you for sitting through episode 0. Episode 1 will probably be recorded next week, and we'll get on a regular schedule after that.
Yeah, I think so. All right, so thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.